About telecoms companies. Now, this is interesting. Telecoms companies are the most disliked in South Africa. Some people even saying hated. It's a bit of a strong word. Well, that's according to research from DataEQ and Deloitte Africa. For the second consecutive year, the sector ranking last, even when compared to insurance companies, banks, and retail food stores. Now, let's hear from Liska Kloppers from DataEQ. Liska, hello to you. Good to have you with us on eNCA. Do we hate telecommunications companies? I feel a bit bad saying that.
I do think that is quite strong. I agree with you. Although there are the net sentiment around telcos in South Africa does come out as the most negative when we compare that to net sentiment for banking and insurance and retail, as you said. And by net sentiment, what we mean is online conversation about their experiences, consumer experiences with the entities in these industries, and we are just taking the positive conversation and removing the negative. And so we get at a net value, and for telcos, that's coming out at negative 31%, whereas for banking, it's negative 7%, and it's, for insurance and retail, it's actually sitting at a net positive. It was in 2021.
Liska, just help viewers that might not understand exactly when we're talking about telecoms. Who are we talking about, and why don't we like them very much?
Yeah, so we're talking about the key players being Telkom, Vodacom, MTN, Cell C, and Rain, so sort of your consumer-facing brands. I think that the key drivers behind, or what we looked at when we were looking at kind of the value from a consumer perspective, was network quality and reliability, the pricing thereof, and then customer service and the resolution to stay connected. And as we know, as you mentioned with Vodacom and the increasing kind of days of load shedding, that's placing a lot of pressure on the telcos. Obviously to be able to stay connected, but also the cost to do so. And that is being felt by the consumer. So the negativity around network and the reliability is sitting at sort of a net negative 90% almost.
Wow.
The customer service for that, online digital customer service, also sitting at almost negative 90%. So a lot of room for improvement there from a consumer perspective. Consumers are frustrated. They're becoming, I think, with the trend for the home to be this place to meet the needs for work and education and retail and security and entertainment, there's a growing dependency on telcos. And so when those kind of needs can't be met because of an inability to connect, I think that's where we're seeing this kind of growth in complaints. And perhaps all of them not keeping up with the digital trend of people reaching out and needing someone to get back to them online.
And this is exactly what I wanted to go to next as well, because it becomes a major PR disaster. I've never understood why big organizations, telcos in this case, hire social media teams. They hire digital teams. They want to be on social media. They want to be available when clients need them, but then they don't reply. And it's that kind of sentiment in the public space, Liska, that causes an issue, because it just takes one person of influence, somebody with more than 5 Twitter followers, and suddenly there is a PR nightmare they have to deal with.
I wouldn't say too much that it's as amplified by sort of influential authors. I think what we're seeing is a myriad of many millions of people speaking. So we're seeing, we processed over 1.8 million data points to get to this. We really are looking at a consumer base and not necessarily just influencer-driven sentiment, although we did have a look at that. But I also think we're seeing a trend of there was this kind of dependency of entities hiring social media teams or kind of farming that out, but we're seeing that kind of coming more in-house because of this type of issue that the kind of issues are more technical. They need people that are in the know to be able to kind of escalate internally to different teams and to be able to resolve those issues. So I do think that the telcos are paying attention to that. I think they are kind of processes underway, but I think that it's not fast enough from a consumer perspective.
I'll leave this as a last question to you, Liska, if that's okay. What does an organization like DataEQ do with this information? I'm essentially trying to get down to, why would you do this? Who does this go to? What's its aim? It's fascinating, but who does what with this?
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. So we actually work with a number of the telcos, the banks, the insurers. We work with the regulator, like the Financial Services Conduct Authority, which is how we looked at the kind of financial services offering from telcos, and if they comply with the treating customers fairly framework. So essentially, all of our kind of products and what we drew from for this study were products that we've developed in collaboration in our kind of services that we've offered to the telcos and the banks and insurers themselves. And the feedback that we provide to them is really the voice of the customer and using that or operationalizing that to be able to make strategic decisions for interventions. So on a day-to-day basis, our bread and butter is really kind of dashboards and all of this in a live kind of view for all of them. And on an annual basis, we've decided to kind of benchmark them for each other in a public space, as well as from a consumer perspective for the consumer to see, you know, where they all kind of stack up against each other.
Well, I think for consumers, it's great to know that companies like DataEQ actually take all the negative sentiment and go back to the companies and say, listen, this is what your customers are actually saying about you. At least there's superheroes somewhere in South Africa when it comes to big companies. DataEQ's Liske Kloppers. Fascinating data, how little South Africans like telecommunications companies. I actually want to go get that report. I'd be curious to see who we love the most. Maybe we'll get Liske back on again another day. Who do we love in South Africa?